The great hall of the conquered fell silent as the lights dimmed. Of the stood at the center of the chamber, her 4 arms folded across her chest, her silver skin reflecting the glow of 1,000 holographic stars that floated around her. She had served the conquered for 200 years. She had never been more afraid than she was at this moment. "Show them," she said. The hologram changed. The stars disappeared, replaced by something else, something that made even the oldest lean back in their seats. It was a recording from the outer reaches, a colony world called Seven, home to 3 million settlers. The recording showed the sky above the main city. At first there was nothing unusual: blue clouds, 2 small moons, a peaceful evening. Then the darkness came. It did not fall from the sky like a ship. It did not crash or land. It simply appeared, spreading across the horizon like ink dropped into water. The darkness swallowed the moons first, then the clouds, then the city itself. The recording ended with static and screaming. "This happened 4 days ago," said. "Seven no longer exists, not destroyed, not conquered, simply gone, every building, every person, every blade of grass. The harrow consumed it all." The chamber erupted in noise. Representatives from 100 species shouted questions, demanded answers, accused each other of lies and fear. Waited. She had expected this. She had done the same thing when she first saw the recording. "Silence," said the ancient voice of first speaker, the crystalline being who had led the conquered for 3,000 years. The chamber obeyed. "Continue." Nodded. "The harrow appeared in our galaxy 6 months ago. We do not know where they came from. The void between galaxies, we believe. They do not communicate. They do not negotiate. They do not stop. They consume everything they touch, and they use what they consume to grow stronger." She waved her hand, and the hologram changed again. It showed a map of the galaxy, with red marks spreading across one corner like a disease. 47 worlds have fallen. 12 species have been completely erased. Our combined fleets have engaged the harrow 17 times. We have lost every single battle. "Then we must build more ships," said the representative from the Empire. "We must unite our armies, we must." "We have tried," interrupted. "We have thrown everything we have at them. They eat our weapons. They eat our shields. They eat the very atoms of our ships and turn them into more of themselves. We cannot stop them. Nothing we have tried has even slowed them down." The chamber fell silent again. This was the truth that no one wanted to hear. The conquered of aligned species, the greatest alliance in galactic history, was losing. Not just losing, being erased. "Then what do you suggest?" first speaker asked. His crystalline body pulsed with colors that had learned to recognize as deep concern. "You did not call this emergency session simply to tell us that we are doomed." Took a deep breath. This was the moment she had been dreading, the moment that would either save the galaxy or damn her forever. "I suggest," she said slowly, "that we drop the veil." The silence that followed was unlike anything had ever experienced. It was the silence of 100 species suddenly forgetting how to breathe. "No," said a voice from the back of the chamber. It was the Keeper, the ancient being whose only duty was to maintain the veil. No one knew what species the Keeper belonged to. No one knew how old the Keeper was. They only knew that the Keeper had been performing this duty since the Conquered was founded, 12,000 years ago. "No, no, no. You do not understand what you are asking." "I understand perfectly," said. "I am asking us to reveal the location of Earth." The word hung in the air like poison. Earth, the forbidden world, the hidden planet, the great secret that every species learned about when they joined the Conquered, and the great secret that every species was sworn to keep. "The Founders hid Earth for a reason," the Keeper said, moving forward. In all her years on the Conquered, had never seen the Keeper move from their corner of the chamber. They witnessed what the humans did. They saw the end of they understood what would happen if that species ever reached the stars. "The Founders are dead," replied. "They are dead, And soon we will be dead too unless we find something that can stop the harrow. You would unleash one monster to fight another. I would do whatever it takes to survive. First speaker raised a crystalline hand, calling for order. The archives from the Founders' era are incomplete. Much was lost in the chaos that followed the extinction. Tell us what you know. Tell us why you believe the humans can help. Nodded, she had prepared for this question. She had spent months digging through the oldest records in the Concord's archives, piecing together fragments of a story that most species had forgotten. 12,000 years ago, she began, the Dominion ruled this part of the galaxy. They were conquerors. They enslaved every species they encountered. They burned worlds for sport. They considered themselves gods. The hologram changed, showing ancient images of the. They were massive creatures, with armored bodies and minds that operated like a hive. Their ships had darkened the skies of 1,000 worlds. They expanded for 2,000 years. No one could stop them. No one could even slow them down. Then they found Earth. The hologram showed a small blue planet third from a yellow star. It looked peaceful, harmless, insignificant. Earth was primitive by our standards. The humans had not even developed basic space travel. They had only recently discovered nuclear energy. By every measure we use to evaluate species, they should have been easy prey for the. Paused, the chamber was completely silent. They sent an invasion fleet of 10,000 ships. It was the largest military force they had ever assembled. They expected complete victory within days. What happened? Someone asked. Looked at the hologram of Earth, that small blue marble floating in the void. We do not know exactly. The records from that time are corrupted, deliberately destroyed, we believe, by the founders themselves. What we do know is that the invasion failed. Not just failed. The entire Dominion collapsed within a single year. 10,000 worlds, trillions of individuals, an empire that had lasted 2,000 years. Gone. Gone, first speaker leaned forward. Explain. I cannot explain, admitted. No one can. The records that survived describe the humans as primitive, weak, fragile. They had no advanced weapons. They had no space fleet. They had nothing that should have been able to threaten thee in any way. Then how did they win? Brought up the last fragment she had found. It was a message, recorded by one of the founding species of the Concord. The image was distorted, the voice barely audible. We have made a terrible mistake, the ancient voice said. We thought the humans were weak because their bodies are fragile. We thought they were primitive because their technology was simple. We did not understand. Their strength is not in their bodies or their tools. Their strength is in their minds, in their refusal to accept defeat, in their ability to hate. The recording crackled. They came to Earth as conquerors. The humans taught them what it means to face a species that would rather burn their own world than surrender. We must never let them reach the stars. We must never let them learn that there are other worlds to conquer. Hide them. Forget them. Pray that they forget us. The recording ended. That is why the veil exists, the keeper said. That is why we hide Earth. The humans are not saviors. They are a danger greater than any we have ever faced. Turn to face the full chamber. Perhaps, she said, but the harrow are at our door, our fleets are broken, our worlds are burning, we have tried everything else. Perhaps it is time to unleash something that even our ancestors feared. She looked at each in turn. Perhaps it is time to ask the humans for help. Commander Sarah stood on the observation deck of the Perseverance, watching the impossible happen. 3 days ago, she had been preparing for a routine patrol near Mars. 2 days ago, she had received orders to report to Earth immediately. 1 day ago, she had learned that humanity was not alone in the universe. Now she was watching a fleet of alien ships approach Earth, and she was trying very hard not to lose her mind. Commander, said a voice behind her. She turned to find Admiral standing in the doorway. His face was pale and his hands were shaking slightly. Sarah did not blame him. Everyone's hands were shaking. "Admiral," she said, "I assume you have new orders for me." "I do," walked to stand beside her, looking out at the alien fleet. "You have been selected to lead the welcome delegation. You will board the lead alien vessel in 3 hours. You will listen to what they have to say, and then you will report back to me." "Why me?" Almost smiled. "Because you scored highest on the psychological evaluation for dealing with unprecedented situations. Because you speak 7 languages and have a gift for communication. And because you volunteered for the first Mars mission, which means you are either very brave or very stupid, and right now we need both." Sarah nodded. She had expected something like this. When the alien ships had first appeared, broadcasting messages of peace in every human language, the world had nearly torn itself apart. Some people wanted to attack. Some people wanted to hide. Some people had simply given up and started praying. It had taken the combined efforts of every government on Earth to calm things down enough to respond. "Do we know what they want?" she asked. "They say they need our help," shook his head. "An alliance of alien species that has existed for 12,000 years, and they need help from us. From a species that has only been in space for 100 years. That does seem strange." "Strange is not the word I would use." Turned to face her directly. "Commander, I am about to tell you something that has not been shared with the public. Something that was included in the aliens' initial transmission, specifically for our leadership." Sarah waited. "They have been watching us, hiding us actually. For 12,000 years, there has been some kind of barrier around our solar system that made us invisible to the rest of the galaxy. They called it the Veil." "Why would they hide us?" His expression was unreadable. "Because they are afraid of us. Something happened a long time ago, something involving humans and another alien species. The records are incomplete, but whatever happened was bad enough that these aliens decided to hide our entire planet rather than risk contact with us." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. "And now they want our help. Something else has come, something worse than us, apparently, something that is destroying their civilization. They have tried everything they know and nothing works, so they came here. They dropped the veil. They revealed themselves to us, because they believe that we might be the only thing in the galaxy that can stop this threat." Sarah looked back at the alien fleet. There were hundreds of ships out there of all different sizes and shapes. Some looked like crystals. Some looked like living creatures. Some looked like nothing she had ever seen before. "Admiral," she said slowly, "what exactly did we do? 12,000 years ago, what did humans do that scared them so badly?" Shook his head. "They did not say. They only said that their founders witnessed it and it was enough to make them hide us forever." He paused. "Commander, there is one more thing. The aliens have shared their records with us. Everything they know about this threat they are facing. I have read those records. And I believe we can help them. I believe we can stop this enemy." His voice was steady now, his hands no longer shaking. "Because this enemy, these Harrow, they operate on a simple principle. They consume everything they touch. They grow stronger with each victory. They have never encountered anything they could not destroy." "So," almost smiled again, but there was something dark in his expression. "So they have never encountered us. They have never faced a species that does not know how to stop fighting. They have never met a race that treats survival as a personal insult to anyone trying to kill them." He put a hand on Sarah's shoulder. "Commander, humanity has spent its entire history at war. With the planet, with each other, with the very idea of extinction. We have survived ice ages, plagues, nuclear weapons, and our own stupidity. We are still here. And now something out there thinks it can consume us." Sarah understood. She thought about human history, all the wars, all the suffering, all the times they had been pushed to the edge of destruction and somehow clawed their way back. "We do not know how to give up," she said quietly. "No," agreed. "We do not. And that might be exactly what the galaxy needs right now. 3 hours later, Sarah boarded the alien vessel. She met a tall silver being with 4 arms and eyes that seemed to hold centuries of wisdom and fear. She listened as explained everything. The harrow, the destroyed worlds, the desperate hope that had brought them to Earth. And she made a decision. "We will help you," Sarah said. "Humanity will fight." Looked at her with an expression Sarah could not quite read. "Thank you," they said, "but I must warn you. This enemy is like nothing you have ever faced. They have destroyed civilizations that lasted millions of years. They have weapons beyond your imagination. They cannot be reasoned with. They cannot be stopped." Sarah smiled, and something in that smile made take a step back. Sarah said, "You hid us for 12,000 years because you were afraid of what we might do if we reached the stars. You watched us fight each other. You watched us nearly destroy ourselves over and over again, and still you were afraid." "Yes." "Then perhaps you should have asked yourself a simple question." Sarah's smile widened. "If we can do that to ourselves, what do you think we will do to something that threatens our existence?" Did not answer, she did not need to. The age of humanity's isolation was over. The galaxy had hidden Earth for 12,000 years. Now it was about to learn why. The human fleet launched from Earth 6 weeks after first contact. By galactic standards, it was laughably small. 312 vessels, ranging from massive carriers to small fighter craft. The Conquered had lost more ships than that in a single battle against the Harrow. But something strange happened as the human fleet passed through the veil and entered galactic space for the first time. The allied species that had gathered to escort them fell silent. Their communications channels went quiet. Their commanders stared at their screens with expressions of confusion and growing unease. The human ships were not beautiful. They were not elegant. They were not designed for anything except one purpose: destruction. Every surface bristled with weapons. Every hull was reinforced with layers of armor that seemed excessive, paranoid, almost insane. The ships looked like they had been built by a species that expected to be attacked at any moment and wanted to make sure they could kill whatever attacked them. Because that was exactly what they were. Commander Sarah stood on the bridge of the Perseverance, watching the stars streak past as they traveled through something the aliens called a transit corridor. It was faster than anything humanity had ever developed. In a single day, they could cross distances that would have taken human ships centuries. "Commander," said Lieutenant, her tactical officer, "we are receiving a transmission from the Conquered flagship. Wishes to speak with you." "Put her through." Silver face appeared on the main screen. She looked tired, Sarah thought, tired and frightened. "Commander, we are approaching the combat zone. I wanted to brief you on what to expect." "Go ahead." Waved a hand, and the screen split to show a tactical display. Red markers covered an entire region of space, spreading outward like a stain. "The Harrow have consumed 73 worlds since you agreed to help us. They are accelerating, learning, growing stronger." Paused. "We have lost contact with the 8 billion individuals. Gone." Sarah kept her face neutral, but inside she felt something cold settle in her chest. Not fear. Something older. Something that had kept humanity alive through countless extinctions. Anger. "What do we know about their weaknesses?" she asked. "We know very little. They consume all matter they touch. Energy weapons seem to have some effect, but they adapt quickly. Physical weapons are useless. They simply absorb them." His expression grew darker. "Commander, I must be honest with you. Our scientists have been studying the Harrow for months. They have found no weakness, no vulnerability. The Harrow are perfect consumers. They exist only to devour." Sarah nodded slowly. "Have you tried asking them what they want?" Blinked. "They do not communicate. They do not." "Have you tried?" There was a long pause. "Commander, the Harrow are not a species in any meaningful sense. They are more like a force of nature, a tide of consumption that cannot be reasoned with." Everything can be reasoned with, Sarah said. Or failing that, everything can be killed. We just need to figure out which approach works best. The transit corridor deposited them at the edge of the combat zone 3 hours later. What Sarah saw through them made her grip the arms of her command chair until her knuckles turned white. The Harrow were darkness given form. They moved through space like clouds of living shadow, absorbing light, matter, everything they touched. In the distance, Sarah could see the remains of what had once been a fleet. Ships from a dozen different species, frozen in the void, their hulls torn open, their crews gone. And in the center of it all, something vast, something that hurt to look at directly. A mass of darkness the size of a small moon, pulsing with stolen light. That is a Harrow hive mind, said quietly, where they digest what they have consumed, where they grow. Sarah stared at it. She thought about Earth, about her family back home, about the billions of humans who were counting on her to do something, anything, to stop this threat. Lieutenant, she said calmly, target the hive mind, everything we have. Commander, our allies have already. I know what they have tried. Target the hive mind, fire when ready. The Perseverance shuddered as it launched its payload. Missiles streaked across the void, followed by energy beams and kinetic rounds. The other human ships followed suit, pouring everything they had at the massive darkness ahead. The Harrow swarm responded immediately. Portions of the cloud broke off, racing toward the human fleet with terrible speed. Sarah watched them come. She did not give the order to retreat. The first wave of Harrow reached the outer ships. Sarah watched the alien escorts try to evade, try to flee, try to do anything except face the consuming darkness head-on. The human ships did not flee. Captain of the destroyer Valor saw the Harrow coming for his ship. His engines were damaged. His shields were failing. He could not escape. So he did not try. All hands said calmly over the intercom, "Brace for impact. It has been an honor." He aimed his ship directly at the heart of the Harrow swarm and engaged maximum thrust. The Valor plowed into the darkness, its reactor overloading, its weapons firing until the very last moment. The explosion that followed was visible from across the solar system. When it faded, a hole had been torn in the Harrow swarm. Not a large hole, not a permanent one, but a hole nonetheless. Sarah watched as other human ships followed the Valor's example. Some deliberately rammed the Harrow. Others detonated their weapons at point-blank range. Others simply refused to stop fighting, firing their weapons until they had nothing left, and then using their ships as weapons themselves. The Harrow had never encountered anything like this. Their entire existence was based on consumption, on overwhelming their prey, on absorbing everything they touched. They had no concept of a species that would rather die than surrender. They had no defense against enemies who considered their own survival secondary to inflicting damage. And they began to learn fear. The Battle of First Contact, as it came to be called, lasted for 3 days. By the time it ended, the human fleet had been reduced to less than 100 vessels. Over 2,000 humans had died. The Harrow had consumed ships, weapons, people, everything they could reach. But they had not won. The hive mind that had pointed out was damaged. Not destroyed, but damaged. For the first time in the Harrow's existence, something had hurt them badly enough that they retreated. They pulled back from the combat zone, their swarms moving with something that almost looked like hesitation. Sarah stood on the bridge of the Perseverance, covered in blood and ash, staring at the tactical display. Around her, the surviving crew worked in exhausted silence. "Commander," Lieutenant said, "is hailing us again." "Put her through." His face appeared on screen. Her silver skin was pale, her forearms trembling slightly. "Commander, what did you do?" Sarah almost laughed. "We fought. We lost a lot of good people, but we fought." "You rammed them. You flew directly into their swarms and detonated your own ships. You refused to retreat even when defeat was certain. His voice was barely a whisper. Why? Sarah thought about the question. She thought about Captain and the crew of the Valor. She thought about all the humans who had died in the last 3 days, fighting an enemy they had never seen before. Because we do not know how to give up, she said finally. Because surrender is not in our nature. Because we would rather die fighting than live as prey. She leaned forward, looking directly into his eyes. You hit us because you were afraid of what we would do if we reached the stars. You were right to be afraid, because now we have an enemy that threatens everything we love, and we are going to destroy it. Not because we are stronger than the Harrow, not because we have better weapons or superior technology, but because we refuse to accept any outcome except victory. Sarah smiled, and it was not a pleasant smile. The Harrow have spent their entire existence consuming everything in their path. They have never met a species that would burn the entire galaxy rather than let them win. They are about to learn what that means. She straightened up, squaring her shoulders. Tell your conquered allies to prepare for a long war. Tell them to study our tactics. Tell them to learn from our example. She paused. And tell them to stay out of our way when we start hunting the Harrow down. Stared at her for a long moment, then slowly she nodded. I understand now, they said quietly. I understand why the founders hid your world. It was not because they feared what you would do to us. It was because they feared what you would become if you ever had a reason to reach beyond your own star. She bowed her head. The galaxy hid Earth for 12,000 years. Now we must face the consequences of awakening it. Sarah did not respond. She was already turning back to her tactical display, already planning the next battle, already thinking about how to hurt the Harrow worse than they had ever been hurt before. The age of humanity's isolation was over. The war for survival had begun. And somewhere in the void between galaxies, the Harrow felt something they had never experienced before. Something cold and terrible and utterly alien to their nature. They felt doubt. The war lasted for 3 years. In that time, humanity changed everything. The conquered had spent centuries developing weapons that were elegant, precise, designed to minimize damage and preserve resources. Humans threw that philosophy away. They built weapons that were brutal, excessive, designed to cause maximum destruction regardless of the cost. They covered their ships in spikes and blades that served no tactical purpose except to make the Harrow hesitate before consuming them. They learned to hate in ways that the galaxy had never seen. Sarah became something of a legend during those years. She led mission after mission into Harrow territory, striking at their hive minds, destroying their feeding grounds, forcing them to retreat again and again. The tactics she developed were studied by every species in the conquered, though most could not bring themselves to actually use them. The tactics were simple: never retreat, never surrender, always make the enemy pay more than they could afford. If a ship was damaged, use it as a weapon. If a position was lost, poison it so the Harrow could not benefit from consuming it. If victory was impossible, make defeat so costly that the enemy would think twice before attacking again. The Harrow learned to fear human ships on sight. They learned to avoid human worlds. They learned that consuming humanity was more trouble than it was worth. But they did not stop. They could not stop. Consumption was their nature, their purpose, their entire reason for existing. So they kept coming, and humans kept killing them, and the war ground on year after year. Until the day Sarah stood before the conquered council once more, 3 years after first contact, and made an announcement that changed everything. We have found their source, she said simply. The holographic display behind her showed a region of space far beyond the galaxy's edge. A darkness between the stars, cold and vast and hungry. This is where the Harrow come from, a tear in space, a wound that has been bleeding darkness into the universe for millions of years. As long as this wound exists, the Harrow will keep coming. No matter how many we kill, no matter how many battles we win, they will never stop." She paused. "We are going to close it." The council erupted in chaos. Representatives from 100 species shouted that it was impossible, that the distance was too great, that no ship could survive such a journey. Sarah waited for them to quiet down. "It will not be easy," she admitted. "We will lose ships, we will lose people, many of us will not come back." She smiled that thin, dangerous smile that the galaxy had learned to recognize. "But we are human. We do not care about easy, we care about winning." The mission to close the wound took another 2 years. Half the human fleet was destroyed along the way. Sarah's own ship, the Perseverance, was torn apart in the final battle, and she barely escaped in a life pod. But they succeeded. The wound between galaxies sealed itself in a flash of light so bright that it was visible on the other side of the known universe. The Harrow swarms that remained in the galaxy began to weaken, cut off from their source. Within months, they were scattered, diminished, hunted to extinction by the combined forces of humanity and the conquered. The war was over. Humanity had won. Sarah retired after the war. She bought a small house on a planet called New Earth, a world that had been given to humanity as thanks for their sacrifice. She spent her days gardening, reading, trying to forget the things she had seen and done. She was sitting on her porch one evening, watching the sunset, when a familiar silver figure walked up the path. Sarah said, not getting up, "It has been a long time." Sat down beside her. The looked older, tired, but there was something peaceful in her expression that had not been there during the war. "I came to say thank you," said, "and to tell you something." Oh, was quiet for a moment, looking at the sunset. "After the war ended, we opened the old archives, the ones from the Founders' era that had been sealed for 12,000 years. We wanted to understand what really happened when they came to Earth." Sarah tensed slightly. She had always wondered about that, always wanted to know what her ancestors had done that had frightened the galaxy so badly. "The invaded Earth expecting easy prey," continued. "They found something else. The humans at that time were primitive, yes. They had no advanced weapons, but they had something they did not understand." "What?" Turned to look at her. "Spite, pure, boundless, irrational spite. The humans refused to surrender even when surrender was the only logical option. They refused to die even when death was inevitable. They refused to accept defeat even when they had clearly lost." She paused. They were hive-minded like the Harrow. They operated on logic, on efficiency, on the principle that resources should not be wasted on battles that could not be won. And humans did not operate that way. No, humans fought battles they could not win simply to hurt the enemy. They destroyed resources rather than let them be captured. They turned every single loss into a cost that they could not afford. Shook her head slowly. The empire collapsed not because humans defeated them militarily. It collapsed because the cost of conquering Earth was so high that it broke their entire civilization. They exhausted themselves trying to consume a species that would rather die than be consumed. Sarah sat in silence for a long moment. "That is why you hit us," she said finally. "Not because we were dangerous, because we were too expensive to fight." "Yes," stood up looking down at her. "And now you have reached the stars. You have defeated an enemy that threatened the entire galaxy. You have proven that your spite, your stubbornness, your absolute refusal to accept defeat can be a force for good." She bowed, a gesture of deep respect. "The galaxy hid Earth for 12,000 years because we feared what humanity would become if you reached the stars. We were wrong to fear you. You saved us all." Sarah watched her go, thinking about everything that had happened. Thinking about the war, the sacrifices, the countless lives lost. Thinking about the future that now stretched out before humanity, limitless and full of possibility. She thought about spite, about stubbornness, about the strange, wonderful, terrible gift that made humans refuse to give up even when giving up was the only sensible choice. The galaxy had hidden Earth because they feared what humanity might become. Now they knew. Humanity had become exactly what the universe needed, not conquerors, not destroyers, but survivors, protectors, the stubborn, spiteful guardians of a galaxy that had once been afraid of them. Sarah smiled and went back to watching the sunset. The universe was vast and full of wonders, and humanity was finally free to explore it. Not as the monsters the founders had feared, but as something better. Something that would fight for the galaxy rather than against it. Something that would never, ever give up.